My main piece of advice is be a warrior and don't turn your back on the battlefield. Just choose your battle wisely.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Over the Wall. Today, I'm joined by Suze Orman. Suze is one of the most prolific women in the world writing about your personal finance, wealth. She's got a podcast called Suze Orman's Women and Money Podcast. She, if you remember, was on TV for many years. I read the book, 9 Steps to Financial Freedom, which I read it many, many years ago, like 20 years ago. And it's just extraordinary what she's done, 14 books total. She was, back in the 80s, one of the first female stockbrokers in Merrill Lynch's offices in Oakland. She's just an extraordinary person. Like I said, I read her book. I just think she's amazing. So thank you for being on the show, Suze.
Thank you, my dear Rob. But just so you know, I'm not just one of the most prolific or most recognized experts in the world when it comes to women. It's among men and women.
That's what I'm saying.
It's important to know that, because I have to tell you, when I first started out, they weren't interested in a woman who talked about money. They didn't understand why that was necessary. So it's interesting how far I've really come.
I read the book, The 9 Steps to Financial Freedom. It was 97, 98. I think I picked it up around 99. It came out. I remember seeing it. And I was at that point kind of living on a couch, starting this company, struggling. And I read it, even though I had no money, because I thought there's some great information in for me as I start to move forward. And I just thought it was really great. So as a person in the world, I found it great. You should read that book. But you've got a new one in called The Ultimate Retirement Guide for 50 Plus, which I've turned 53. So I have to start reading that one also. So I wanted to start with first story about your dad. And this is how you start the book, The 9 Steps to Financial Freedom, about what happened to your dad and what you experienced as a child. And I wanted to sort of talk to you, what kind of impact did that have on you? Obviously, he was an entrepreneur. And I just want to talk about that. A lot of times we try to understand, like, in the head of, how did you get on this path? How did you get on this journey?
You know, sometimes I think you hear entrepreneurs and they say, oh, I had this goal and I had this plan and I did this, then I did that, then I did that, then I did this. I never had a plan and I never had a goal. And the journey kind of unveiled itself to me, Rob, versus me looking for this journey. So with, my father, the main thing that I learned from my father, or I thought I had learned from my father, is that money was the key to happiness. Because if you read the book, and that book went on to be one of the top selling books of all time for Random House. I think it was, at the time, it was the #1 selling book for them in their 50-year history. It was selling 1 million copies in hardback a month. And it did that because it touched a core within people that really was the foundation of, what is money? Why don't you do that which you know you should do with money? Why aren't you as powerful as you are meant to be? And on and on. But I watched my father go into a burning little store to get the cash register. It was his store, because all the money in the world was in this cash register, and it was a metal box back then. And I watched him bring it out, throw it down on the ground. And with that, most of his chest and his arm skin came with it. And I watched my father get 3rd-degree burns all over his body, essentially, simply for money. And so, therefore, money must be more important than life itself, because I watched my father risk his life for it. And he never really recovered from that. He then got emphysema from the smoke, and on and on and on, and spent most of his life in the hospital. But I learned from my parents that, or what I thought I had learned, was that money had to be the key to happiness, because they were so unhappy. And I thought they were unhappy because they didn't have any money. It came to be that they didn't have money because they were unhappy. And that's what I learned later on in life, which was the premise, really, for the 9 Steps to Financial Freedom.
Now, if I want to take the journey with you on being an entrepreneur. So you see your father go through this episode in his life, then you go into work in, like, banking and Prudential and Merrill Lynch. And then one day,
But you have to know how I got there, Rob.
yeah, how'd you
But
get there?
you're
That's
missing a really, you're
yeah.
missing a really big section, because in 1973, when I was through with the University of Illinois after having gone there for 4 years, I got in a van with my girlfriend at the time, and we headed out to California. Lived on the streets in Berkeley, California, for 3 months till I landed my dream job, a waitress at the Buttercup Bakery. And I was a waitress at the Buttercup Bakery for 7 years, making $400 a month till I was essentially 29 years of age. But while I was there, I watched my entrepreneurial spirit that I didn't even know I had, or my ability to make things grow that way, that I watched my suggestions make Richard and Michael, who both owned the bakery, grow from a tiny little place on the corner of College and Alcatraz in Berkeley, California, to them owning half the block. From one suggestion I had after another. And then I decided, I know I can open up my own restaurant. Look what I've done here. And so I called my mom and dad asking for $20,000. And they said, Susie, we don't have $20,000. You should know that. We don't have that kind of money. Went back to work the next morning. And a man that I had been waiting on for 7 years by the name of Fred Hasbrook came in, and he said, what's wrong, Sunshine? You don't look happy. And I told him the story. He went and he sat down with all the other gentlemen that I've been waiting on for all those years. And they came back with checks totaling $50,000 and a little note on a napkin that said, this is for people like you to have your dreams come true, to be paid back in 10 years at no interest if you can. To make a very long story short, right? I didn't know what to do with that money. I was in shock. They told me to take it down to Merrill Lynch, put it in a money market account. I didn't know what a Merrill Lynch or a money market account was. And so I went there, was introduced to the broker of the day. Randy was his name. And he had me fill out all this paperwork, but really, he only asked me to do is not even fill it out, was just sign my name. I said, okay. Then he said, how would you like to make a quick $100, a week? And I said, Randy, that's more than I make as a waitress almost. And he said, okay. And then I left. He knew what the money was for. He knew people had lent it to me. And again, to make a long story short, he played the options market, which you may or may not know is the most speculative type of investing, or one of them out there. Within 3 months, all $50,000 was lost. So now I didn't know what to do. And I thought, I know I can just be a broker. They make you broker. So I went into Merrill Lynch dressed in red and white striped Sassoon pants, a size 6 back then, white cowboy boots, they were tucked into them, a blue silk shirt, go in to get a job. No women were working for Merrill Lynch at that time as a stockbroker. Find myself in the manager's office, who proceeds to tell me women belong barefoot and pregnant. I then simply say, okay, how much will you pay me to make me pregnant? He said $1,500 a month. And I went, oh, and he said, but I will hire you, but I'm going to fire you in 6 months. Well, then I knew that was $9,000. And I thought, okay. And
Okay.
that's how it all started.
But then you decide one day to leave it, right? You decide, like, this is what we always try to find. There was something, I had a job for a small bit of time, about 6 months, and I got fired. And then I went on my way to just being an entrepreneur. And I come from an entrepreneurial family, all small business owners and stuff, but it was a trigger for me. And I just said, I don't want to work for anyone again. What happened there at that moment? Do you remember that specific moment?
What happened was they didn't fire me in 6 months. And partly that was because, a long story again, but I became one of their top producing brokers. 2 years later, he left. I was now doing fabulous. I then went to Prudential-based Securities as a vice president for them. And I realized how much money I was making for other people. Once again, that little light bulb that made me want to open my own restaurant, that then forced me on some level to go to get a job to pay it back. That then I was like, I'm still making money for other people, because why? As a stockbroker, they get 60%, you get 40%. I'm like, wait a minute. So then I started my own firm, right, in 1987. Then in
87.
1990,
Yeah.
in 1993, I simply wanted to do what? I wanted to write a book to impress my clients. That first book was written in 1995 called You've Earned It, Don't Lose It. And that book went on to sell 800,000 copies that year in hardback. Authors don't sell 800,000 copies of a book. They sell, maybe if they're lucky, 25,000 copies, 15,000 copies in hardback. But people started to love that book. And from there, the other books went on to be, all of them. There are 10 New York Times consecutive bestsellers,
Yeah.
right? But, and that's how that started.
But so do you think, I always ask people this question, you know, you think entrepreneurs are born or they're made? In your case, if you were self-reflective, because that, once again, it seems so easy. I wrote a book and it took off, and we're like, no, but there's stuff to do to get there. And so,
Yeah.
do you think it was inside of you, or just you just like learned your way through it?
I learned my way through it. However, I think some people are meant to be leaders, and some people want to be led. Some people want a very simplistic life that's not putting that down. They want to go to work. They want to get a paycheck. They want to come home. They want to be with their family. They don't want to risk their own money. They don't necessarily want to work 7 days a week, 18 hours a day. They don't want to do those things. And so there are people that just have this drive. They have this drive to do something. They don't even know what it is sometimes, but they just go for it. I mean, sure, you see me successful right now. Do you have any idea how many things I tried before what you see? You know, I tried multi-level marketing. I tried this. I tried that. All failed until I found something that I was really passionate about, that I wasn't doing it to make money. I was doing it because I loved it and I found it fascinating and I wanted to help people. And I wanted to make sure that nobody ever lost their money like I lost my money. I never wanted that to happen to anybody else. By the way, Merrill Lynch ended up giving me all my money back plus 18% interest and fired Randy. That's besides the point.
But so when you think about some of the failures, because we like to talk about sometimes. I mean, I guess you could take even the life you've had, you know, post Merrill, when you got the books, post Prudential. I mean, when you got the books out. I mean, we talked. The name of this podcast is Over the Wall, and I guess, can you think of some of the times that you hit a wall in building your business, and you were like, "Whoa, this is tough," and you went around above, and we like to always hit on a couple of these examples, or one that you can really remember that was major.
Well, you know, to be a stockbroker, you have to take your Series 7 exam. And the first time I took it, I failed. That was a wall. First wall that I was like, Suze Orman, you're either going to get over that wall or you're always, you know, just going to be stuck there. So I studied really hard for one more week, took the exam and passed it again. Then I had to face the wall of being a woman in this area because, you know, in finance, especially at the brokerage firms and all, they were so sexist. It's not even funny. The male brokers and the managers were expected to sleep with the other women in the office, and it was just horrific. So I had to get over that wall and go, no, I am never going to compromise myself. I am not going to, you know, go, okay, just so I can succeed. No. And so I stood up for the truth and what was good for me. And then all along the road, like even with my first book, You've Earned It, Don't Lose It, all the publishers turned it down. In 1995, the wall was, who needs a book? Like I said earlier in the podcast, who needs a book about finance from a woman? Well, they all regretted it to this day. And this little tiny publisher, Newmarket Press in New York, Esther Margolis said, I'll do it. I'll pay you $10,000 to write a book. It was like, okay. But then the wall was, right, how would anybody know about this book? Now, I would go to a bookstore to do a book signing and not one person would come. No, nobody came. So I would give a seminar to the people.
They really, you had nobody came. I mean, that's
nobody came. Zero.
That's a terrible feeling, I would assume, a little bit.
But this is the best thing about that, Rob, was because I was there, because she decided to send me on a 27-city book tour, but nobody ever came. And so I would sit there and I would give a seminar to all the people, the booksellers who were hopefully selling books that night. And what happened was, after that, I would leave. When anybody came in and asked about a book on finance, it was those booksellers that would say, I just heard a talk from this woman by the name of Suze Orman. You have got to get the book called You've Earned It, Don't Lose It. Pop, pop, all, and I can go on from there. 9 Steps to Financial Freedom. Every one of them had a wall in its own way. Even when they wanted me to do my own show on CNBC, the wall was, I didn't want to do it for 5 years. I didn't want to sign a contract. I didn't like that. It was like, what if I didn't want to do it? And they said, we're not going to pay you. That was the wall, right? Fine, go do the show, but we're not going to pay you. And I was like, fine, I don't need your money. So I'm just going to do the show. So for the very first year of the Suze Orman show on CNBC, I didn't get paid 1 penny to do that show.
So you just did it.
At the end,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
You did it.
And guess what?
To be out there, right?
I did it because I wanted to do it. Period. For no motive, no whatever. Not like, oh, this is going to be my stepping stone to do this and to do that. No. It was like, let's see what happens. And what was interesting about that is immediately almost that show went to be the #1 show on CNBC. And when the year was over, I got to dictate essentially my own terms. But I didn't know that. So what I'm trying to say to all of you listening right now or watching is that how committed are you to being that which you want to be? How committed are you to standing in your truth? How committed are you to knowing what your truth is? And how committed are you to working as hard as you possibly can to create that truth? Because it's easy to look at me now and go, oh, well, look at Suze Orman, blah, blah, blah. What you didn't see behind the scenes was 7 days, so for 10 years, I did not spend more than one night in the same city for 10 years. 10 years. I gave it everything I had. I didn't know the name no or the word no. It was like, Suze, we want you on the Today Show. Larry King. Oh, I want you on Larry King that night. All right. I did the Today Show in the morning. I flew to California, did Larry King. I got back on a plane, did another show that I would fly 77,000 miles in 1 month. And so nothing stopped me. So an entrepreneur has this fiery thing inside of them. If you want to do something and you're doing it just because you don't know what else to do, Rob, or you don't have another way to make money. So you think, oh, maybe I'll just try this franchise looks good or whatever. I'm not sure that's the key to success.
The way we described the wall with different guests over time is and getting better understanding is that it's kind of set up for a reason to keep the fakers out. Like if everyone could go all the way, it would just be easy. But these walls are set up to just kind of look you straight in the face and say, are you committed? Because if you're not everyone can do this. It's just not an easy from rags to riches, from idea to company or to a book idea to actually a book that is a bestseller, or many books are bestsellers. So it feels like, what do you think? It feels like the wall set up just to keep out people who are not serious on trying to make this journey.
I don't know if the wall is there to keep other people out, but I do know that the wall is there for you to figure out how bad do you want it. I could remember, saying every time I hit that wall, whatever it was in many ways, I remember saying, all right, God, is this your test? Are you testing me to see how much I want something? Come on, God, because I believe in God very much. Come on, God, send me any test you want and watch, I will pass it. I am not going to fail. Come on, God. And that was my attitude as I started on the adventure of being the Suze Orman who you see today.
Do you think you can be an entrepreneur or take this journey, call it journey of purpose, without believing in God?
Oh, I do. I don't think everybody has to believe in God, but I
Or
think
believe in
everybody
a
has to.
higher, that there's something, a hand, I call it like the hand, it's the hand of God out
Yeah,
there, that sometimes you think you're staring into the abyss, and something pushes you along because you're committed. But it feels like sometimes that I've talked to many people. Do you think you could do this journey without just thinking there's nothing else out there to help me? Or what do you think?
right. I probably couldn't have done this journey without that faith.
Same with me. I couldn't have done
Yeah.
this without knowing.
Uh,
Now, many years later, 20, I know something's out there to help me along, I think.
that no way could I have. However, I do not also believe that that is necessary for somebody to make it. More than anything, I think people have to have faith in who they are. People have to know their own thoughts. People have to do what is right versus what is easy. And people have to be a warrior and not turn their back on the battlefield. And they also have to really have a mantra for themselves that they have to have faith, even if it's in themselves, that everything happens for the best. If they have those things and they're in touch with that, I think they have a good chance to succeed.
A minute ago, you talked about people have to stand in their truth. It's a
Yeah.
very powerful saying. What does that mean? To stand in your truth,
Well,
from your
you
perspective.
know, it's the truth of my whole life is that I've been a lesbian forever. I'm what they call this gold star lesbian. I didn't even know what that was, but fine, Kristen Wiig kind of educated me on that with all her time she imitated me on Saturday Night Live. But again, that's besides the point, right? But is that I always kind of knew that I was gay, really starting when I was in 8th grade. And and that was my truth. And I stood in that truth. So the first time I ever went to get a job, not as a waitress because it was Berkeley, California. Everybody working there was gay or whatever. It didn't really matter, right? So, but when I went for a job at Merrill Lynch, it was the first thing I told them. I said, "You do know that I'm a lesbian, right?" And they were just like, and in their heads, it was like, oh, great, a lesbian that's going to sleep with us. Well, that turned out to be different for them, but that's besides the point, right? But when CNBC, it was like, you do know I'm a lesbian, right? My second book, which was The 9 Steps to Financial Freedom, at that point went for $800,000 from Crown Publishing. And Chip Gibson was the president of Crown at that time. And I went in and I said, you do know that you're about to pay $800,000 for me to write a book, and I'm a lesbian. And if I'm asked, I'm going to tell everybody. In fact, I'm probably going to tell them even if they don't ask me. And I said, well, tell me something we don't know. And I went, okay, just making sure. But because I stood in my truth, whether it was on Larry King, no matter where I was, even when I won my first Emmy Award, I think it was in 2004. And here I am, and I'm on television and I'm kissing KT before I go up. KT is my spouse. And I go up and I go, KT, this one's for you. I love you. Like I always stood in my truth. And that truth gave me power. And that power is what everybody was attracted to. Because, Rob, I didn't have to worry about, oh my God, they're going to find out. Somebody's going to out me. Oh my God, it didn't keep me back. And so the truth is so powerful. And I have a saying that, the truth attracts people, People control money, therefore the truth attracts money, and lies repel people. People control money, therefore lies, repel money. You got to be powerful. The truth makes you powerful. Lies render you powerless. And if you don't stand in your truth, oh, you are lying.
Where did you learn that though? I mean, it's once again, I think it's extraordinary, but I think people have a lot of doubts. They're afraid to, like you said, you came out as being gay, being a lesbian. Like that's a major step, and you did that. But even
especially way back when I did it.
when did you do it? How old were you when you came out?
I was like 13, 14.
Yeah,
And I
so
remember I'm 70 right now, Rob. So that was a long time ago. It's not like today, although it
yeah.
still is
Oh yeah.
hard for many kids today, right? But
Oh,
back then it was something that it was not good on any level. It
so
wasn't. And
where did you find like where did you find that part of you? Like maybe it's a question you can't answer, but like you found that within yourself as a young girl, and you
yeah.
carry a lot more of that principle throughout your life. It's one of your values, obviously. But once again, I think people are challenged with that, even though you'll say it like just, stand in your own, truth. A lot of entrepreneurs, I think they'll have a lot of doubt. They have noise in their head. People tell them things. You can't do that. You're too young. You're inexperienced. You don't know what you do. Like, where do you find that thing?
I think, believe it or not, that comes back to God, at least for me. Because if you believe in a higher power, or you believe that everything happens for the best, and you really believe it, that they aren't empty words, they're truths, they're truths, and you know who you are, then at least I knew I was a lesbian. I knew it. I knew who I was attracted to. I knew who I wanted to, be with. I knew that. And so it was just, and maybe it was my naivete back then, but it was like, guess what, everybody? I would just kind of tell them. Like, I'll never forget the first time I told my parents, without even me knowing why, is that I had brought my girlfriend home from California for a Thanksgiving, and we were still very young. We were just out of college, and even in college, I ran a gay women's house and everything. But I guess my parents just never really put it together, and I never thought I needed to say anything because I brought women home. We, were together. I just thought they knew, and and it turned out that they did know, but they never told anybody else in the entire family. So now I bring my girlfriend home for Thanksgiving. The entire extended family is there. And somebody asked me the question, well, Susie, why did you move to San Francisco, to Berkeley, California? I said, because it's so much easier to be a lesbian there. Very naively just said that. Well, everybody just was like, bam. So my parents, who knew, obviously, now that I think about it all the way back then, never told anybody. They didn't tell my brothers. They didn't tell my aunts. And I just never thought about it. I thought everybody knew. And so I don't know, Rob. I always was so happy. And I loved being who I was on every level. I loved being a waitress. I loved serving people. I loved everything I did. I mean, and partly because I loved what I did, the customers I waited on felt that love, and they give me $50,000. Do you see, everybody? It's what causes you to do that which you do. And when you come from love, you get back more than you'd ever expect. You come from the desire of being a CEO or an entrepreneur and making a lot of money and being successful. You'll get very little back if love isn't part of that equation. In fact, the number one part of that equation.
So you write in your book, 9 Steps of Financial Freedom. A lot of it's around, and I think this connects to, once again, the entrepreneurs, but people's pasts and their emotional scars or whatever they had, and that's making them do things. In your case, talk about what are you doing with your finances? How are you living your life? And but I think there's a broader thing there of your past, and maybe you can just unpack that a little bit. How do you work through that? How can you tell people to work through? You may came from some past. You may have habits that are bad. You may have experiences from your childhood that are making you do things now. How do you create more of a Tim's story? We had Tim's story on here, the miracle mentality. How do you create something? So what do you think? How does it work?
Well, what's interesting is obviously we don't have a long time for me to take everybody through this, but currently just what's being offered are 2 programs called the 9 Steps to Financial Independence, as well as the 3-step reset. 3 steps that will reset everything that you're doing. And I'm sure if you go to suzeorman.com, I'm sure you'll find them there. And that you can go through those steps, for a really small sum of money. I think it's $27, something like that, right, for the 3-step reset. But that is the basis of the 9 steps to financial freedom. And, to put it very simplistically, when it comes to money is really something that's far more than any other entity that you'll ever deal with in your life. And money is simply, in my opinion, a physical manifestation of who you are, because you're the one who has to go out and earn it. You're the one who goes out and spends it, invests it. Without you, there's no way for money to come into your life, really. Forget about inheriting and things like that, but in normal situations. And so if you don't have the money that you want in your life right now, the question has to be asked and answered, why not? And you have to go within to see why you are doing without. Because to have more, you need to be more. And to be more, you need to know what's keeping you from being that which you are meant to be. So the 9 Steps to Financial Freedom, or the course now, the 9 Steps to Financial Independence, because over the years, Rob, I realized that people could have a whole lot of money, but they're not necessarily free, because they're still dependent on their financial advisor, they're this person, they're that person. So I changed it to the 9 steps to financial independence. So where you're independent and you're not dependent on anybody else to have what you want. Right. So
So you want to own it. You can own it. A lot of people, I think there's 2 things in people's lives that they find hard to own. One is their finances, one is their health. You kind of you always feel like you got to give it up to, if a doctor tells you, like, you're in their office, they take a chair, they like, take this pill. Sometimes you don't even think, right? You just, okay, take the pill. Okay, that's fine. It's the same thing with your finances. It's the same thing with entrepreneurs. I think when they meet, I called it the gray hair old man. It was in my life where somebody who looked experienced could tell me something and I would doubt myself. But it seems like in this lane, this area that you've really done so much work in, your whole belief system is that we can take control of it. We can own it. We don't need financial advisors per se, right?
Yeah.
We can own our own.
Well, it's not that you don't need them.
Right.
You might need them. You might have a whole lot of money. Like, I have a financial advisor, and I have an financial advisor because of the amount of money that I have. I have a whole team that's like, you got to discuss it. It's like, it's a lot. But when they tell me something or I tell them something, we both understand the language that we're speaking. I know people who are billionaires, but don't have a clue where any of their money is. They don't, like, I just was talking to somebody the other day that's worth $20 billion, and he doesn't know where his accounts are. He doesn't know a lot. Somebody just bought a house for him in the Bahamas somewhere, and on, and he didn't even know that happened. So it's not about you have to do it all on your own, but you have to know how to speak the language of money. You have to know when your financial advisor or advisors have your best interest at heart versus their own. So that's why the Women in Money podcast, as well as Everyone Smart Enough to Listen, the official title, is so essential, because it talks about the emotional side of money, but it also talks about, like, a little bit ago, I did a whole Suze school on Bitcoins and one on annuities and one on where do you invest money and all of this stuff. And so you have to understand all of that, which is really why people just love that podcast so much.
Yeah, and I talk about it for entrepreneurs. A lot of times I'll meet entrepreneurs because I'm doing some I'll help them out, and people ask me for advice, or I invest in some venture stuff. And sometimes I meet entrepreneurs and they just like, oh, I'm not the money person, or I like, you ask them about the P&L and it'll be like, oh, it's almost like I can't understand that, and I have someone else do that. What's an accountant or CFO or whatever. And I always tell them, like, you've got to know your P&L. Like, you got to know the P&L of your personal life, I guess, and you got to know the P&L of your business life, because not knowing it and thinking it will get you into trouble.
Yeah, and you said your personal life. KT and I now have been together 20 years, and KT came to this relationship, a multimillionaire herself, but we still don't share money that way or combine money. We each have all our own separate accounts, but every single month we sit down and go through a stack of statements that are this high, and KT knows everything. So if I were to die tomorrow, KT wouldn't have to be wondering, what do I do? Whatever. So she talks to the financial advisors more than I do. She drives them crazy because sometimes she'll see a 6-cent charge or a $6, whatever it may be, and she wants to know why it's on the statement, and she makes them take it off. And so when they see Kathy Travis calling, they go, uh-oh, here we go.
So I want to ask you a question I ask everybody, and it's about this thing I call the gremlin in your head. Sometimes we can have a voice in our head that's not so positive, that's telling us things, and we almost feel like we have to fight it. And I've had different people tell me what the voice is. And I was wondering if you have one of these voices in your head sometimes, like a little gremlin, you're like, shh, and you have to beat the gremlin. Do you have something like that?
Not anymore. Maybe there was years and years ago, and I don't remember it right now, but it would be very difficult given all of my accolades, from Emmy Award winners twice to, named twice by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in the world, the 100 most powerful women in the world by Barron's when it comes to finance, by Forbes magazine, the most successful fundraiser in the history of public television, having raised now over $250 million for them, and on and on and on. The #1 show on CNBC. I'm on QVC or HSN, and on and on. The list just goes on, Rob.
Yeah, but you still don't have. Yeah.
Now it's like I choose. Here's the thing. I'll never forget this. I was doing The View, and this was when Barbara Walters was still on it, and it's live. And we were sitting there and we were just talking, and I was telling everybody how happy I was and everything. Now we go live. And Barbara Walters says to me, Suze Orman, why are you always so damn happy? And I say to her, because I never do anything I don't want to do. And because I don't do anything I don't want to do, I don't have these gremlins. I don't have these regrets. I don't have these things of, oh God, I have to do this today. I don't want to do this. Everything I accept, everything to interview, whatever, I want to do it. Why would I do it? All the companies that have come to me, the fintech companies, to say, be our partner, do this, we'll do that. It's like, no. Until recently I said yes, which I was telling you when we were, before the podcast, I did co-founded my first company here called securesave.com. But because I wanted to do it, I loved the idea. More important than was it going to succeed or not, I wanted to know, was it real? And did people want it? And if people wanted it, then I was going to do it. Not did we want it as co-founders. It's what do the people want? and the people will always tell you what they want. And I just follow that lead.
That's awesome. So if you want to beat it, that's a good piece of advice. You want to beat it, just follow what you want to do. Don't follow
Yep.
other people's words. Just follow what you want to do. Wake up in the morning, do what you want to do. And then you don't have to worry about the gremlin.
And also, you have to have blindfolds on. You're starting down a path. You want to do something. And then somebody comes to you with an idea, and all of a sudden you go off the path, and that fails, and you are on the path for success. But because somebody else came to you with a concept, all of a sudden now you're giving up this thing that you were doing. So the other thing that's really important is you all have to keep good company. You have to keep good company in that where people encourage you to try versus like, that's a horrible idea. That's not going to work. Suze Orman, you don't know how to write a book. Who's ever going to buy a book that don't think that that they didn't tell me that? Friends of mine, my girlfriend at the time, Melissa, who's ever, that's ridiculous, Suze Orman. That's not going to happen. That was the 9 steps to financial freedom. Okay, that's besides the point. All right, but you have to keep good company and you have to keep blindfolders on, and you cannot multitask. You have to do one thing and you have to do it better than anybody else.
Stay focused. Do the one
Yeah.
thing great. So not to
Yeah.
turn, but you talked about Bitcoin and you seem to be a fan of it. I'm also a fan. I had on the show Anthony Delorio, who's one of the founders of Ethereum. He's one of the 5 founders, and he was on here talking about it a couple of shows ago. But obviously, it's been really volatile the last last about 4 weeks. Give us your perspective on it. Why you think it's important? Why you think it's something to invest in? Because there's a lot of FUD every day about China. Today was China again, and there's the governments and this, and then there's Elon Musk, and there's a lot of noise every day around it. But what's your perspective?
Yeah. I think that how the millennial goes and younger people go and what they're interested in, that you have to pay attention to how they do things. Otherwise, in my opinion, you're really missing the boat. You also have to see, where is big money going? 100 million, a billion, whatever it may be. Where is it going? And for a while, it was going into Bitcoin. Now, obviously, Elon Musk has really thrown a ratchet into this. The one thing, that I don't like, and I was on CNBC, I think last a week or whenever it was a while ago, talking about Bitcoin. I don't like that one man has that much control over the ups and downs of an investment. I don't like it.
Yeah.
And however, I think that will work out. I think what people will have to wait for with Bitcoin is they're going to have to wait to see, how does the energy and the amount of energy it takes to mine Bitcoins, how is that going to come to be decreased? And, Jack Dorsey's doing a lot with that, with his wind fields and everything, with Square. I think Square's a fabulous company to play possibly Bitcoin through. I think there are other ways to play Bitcoin. I made a serious sum of money buying MicroStrategies on June 5th a year ago, when it was about $125 a share. And I decided to do that because their CEO was putting all of his extra cash into Bitcoin. And I thought, I don't trust anybody with that kind of money. A wallet, I don't want it. I didn't quite get, if you put money into Coinbase or even PayPal, I die. Where does that money go? There's no beneficiary forms at that time. It was just, I didn't like it. So I thought, I know, I'll play Bitcoin through a stock. And I did it through MicroStrategies, sold it at about $1,000. When it went up, made a tremendous amount of money. Now, it's down 600, 500. I don't check it often.
Yeah.
Right. But that's other ways to play it. However, I think Bitcoin will have its day. I do. I think when they solve the energy things, and we'll see what happens with China and all the other stuff, I don't see Bitcoin as a currency. I don't think they're processing in the way they do things. I think there's other cryptocurrencies out there that are so fast in their processing right now. Absolutely. But I think Bitcoin more of an investment. And I think Bitcoin is solid enough that major companies or pensions or whatever will put money back in there. But until then, when it was at 35,000 before Musk came out, I did on my podcast, I said, it's very possible you'll see it go down to 30,000. You could see it go down to 26,000. I wouldn't be biting here if I were you. I would just put a small amount of money in when it goes down. And then he comes out, it goes up to 40. A little bit ago, I looked as we're recording this, it was at, I think, 32,000. Kramer thinks it could go to 12,000 or whatever. But I don't think it's a bad idea to have a very small amount of money that you can afford to lose, in Bitcoin. I don't have a problem with that.
Good. And I was actually at a dinner with Kathy Wood from ARC last week. Yeah, last week in New York, small dinner. And she was saying that she believed, I won't put words in her mouth, but she was saying that there are, when it comes to the energy consumption, she thinks it could drive a lot of change in clean energy, because it's talking about some company that's here in the US that has a lot of solar fields. They store into batteries, but they can only store so much of that energy, and then they just let it go. Like throughout the day, they can't store anymore. But now they were looking at setting up a hosting facility for mining rigs. So there was a sense that because of the value of it and why it can be important in the future or the present, is that it will even drive a lot when it comes to even more than EVs and stuff like that. It could drive a lot of behavioral change when it comes to alternative energies.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to look at it like that.
I think Kathy's one of the smartest people out there, are none. And I know a lot of people, because ARC and all the 3 ARCs that she has out there have taken a hit, even though they're seriously up from where they were a year and a half ago. People tend to forget that. Right. But I would listen to anything Kathy says.
Yeah. She's an extraordinary person. I usually ask as a last question, which is, if you could give that one piece of advice to someone listening, what would it be? What would you give us?
Don't rush. Don't rush to be rich.
Don't rush.
That would be my advice. Don't rush to be rich. Right? Because when you rush to be rich, what you're really rushing is to be poor. But it's in financially speaking, it would be just take one step after another step. And when it feels right and you see a little bit of progress happening, right, then, just keep going for it. But my main piece of advice is be a warrior and don't turn your back on the battlefield. Just choose your battle wisely.
It's awesome advice. I want to thank you once again, Suze, for being on the show. It's just extraordinary what you've done. When you think about take your time, think about from the time you left in '87 to today and what you've built one step at a time. It just goes to show you've taken the journey, you've committed, you've stayed focused. It's an extraordinary bit of entrepreneurism that you've done in the world. Plus, you've given a gift over to people with all the works and all the things you do to take control of something that's very important in their life. If they need freedom, financial freedom, and you're giving them frameworks to do that. And I just want to thank you for that.
There you go. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me.